It is Monday, April 18th, 2022. Welcome to Veda.
Cut the carbs.
As I believe I may have mentioned yesterday, in talking about an old special interest with some props, I may have revived that special interest, at least for the moment. I'm already getting a little sick of this. It didn't help that I watched this one extra, starting early in the first season and then running through the entirety of the second season. They would announce next week's villain. Well, usually there were two cases where it was tomorrow's villain, because the second season had 2 3-parters with a 2-parter in between, and remember, twice weekly time slot. But as I think I mentioned, it was a little bit difficult for me not to talk about this during the Easter dinner and just have normal, or try to insert myself in normal conversation. It would have been a little different than when I was 7 or 8, and then Batman said this, and then the Joker said this, and then they used the Bat Beam and the Batmobile. You know that little antenna thing, that plus side antenna thing that's in the front there between the passenger and driver side. You know, it goes, and then it shot a beam which looked like a lightning bolt. And yeah, on my Corgi Batmobile, when you push that, a saw blade comes out of the front. I don't know if that was actually in the show or not. It'd probably be called something like the Bat Saw or the Bat Blade or the Bat Buzzsaw. Instead, I might be talking about a lot of things I didn't notice, at least in the episodes I've seen so far. The sound effects tend not to be in sync with any kind of connection with a fist or anything. And I mean, I'm not talking about the audio sound effects. I'm talking about how actually, the brass instruments aren't always in sync with anything actually happening, but more so than the superimposed sound effects. It's almost like a Filmation laugh track. On the other hand, the cinematography that's something I've becoming more and more conscious of in recent years is rather good. It's the sets are not photographed in a way that makes them obviously look like sets, unlike or for that matter, the first segment in the pilot episode of Night Gallery, which actually that really stands out because the second segment was the professional directorial debut of Steven Spielberg. One of these days I will do a video comparing those if I ever get around to it. Then again, I mean, all of these things were basically melodramas, whereas Batman's an action series. I mean, if I compared it to the cinematography of action movies of the time, that might be a closer example. But it's still interesting. I mean, while pretty much everything is obviously a set or a backlot, it's, also a certain artificiality that was present in, these things here is also present in Batman, but it's supposed to look artificial. It's supposed to look like a comic. Even if it's the perception of people who have a low opinion of comic books, it's still, I saw the second and third stories, episodes 3 through 6, and actually both of them are based on comic book stories, and I may eventually do a comparison of that. The first story, in case you want to know, which I saw basically as soon as I bought the box set, is a 2-parter with Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, and I watched those 2 episodes and listened to the commentary. But the second story is the series debut of the Penguin, and I don't think I have to explain to you who played him. You're a bum, Rock! Okay, now I definitely don't have to explain who played him. Burgess Meredith is, of course, good in everything, even if everything around him is not necessarily good, but also the Penguin, being one of the goofier villains, at least the way he was handled back then, is very suited to this goofier take on the series. And the story, I kind of wish had been adapted later in the series instead of just as a second story, because it's a bit metatextual. One common theme, even in versions of Batman that are purported to be serious, is that criminals will frequently leave behind cryptic clues, and Batman will make these outrageous, even if they're not intended to be, leaps of logic and to figure it out, and he'll usually be right unless it's a trap to deliberately make him guess the wrong thing. So in this story, the Penguin leaves behind an umbrella that's obviously a clue of some sort, and Batman and Robin analyze it, and they try to figure out what kind of crime this possibly means the Penguin was going to perpetrate, and how he'd do it, and how they'll stop him. And unbeknownst to them, it has a listening device. So they are actually planning out a crime for the Penguin, planning out how he's going to do it and how they will stop him. And since the Penguin knows how they plan to stop him, he can get around that. And like I said, it's a little bit too bad they did that so early, before it was so clearly established to the television audiences about the clues and the crazy deductions. And we'll ignore the fact that despite heavily analyzing the umbrella, they somehow don't notice the listening device, which, had it been switched on during times when Alfred is there and they're calling him by name, or they're calling each other by their real names, or they're yeah, kind of overlook that. It's also this rather hilarious sequence. The Penguin disguises himself by wearing a mask. They don't go so far as having people not recognize him, fortunately, but it's still pretty funny. He's just still wearing his regular outfit, and he's got his very distinctive nose. It's a funny gag that works, I think. Now, the Joker story, like I said, I will eventually hopefully do a video comparing these stories to their television adaptations. But there's just one thing I thought was hilarious, and that is that in both cases, the Gotham Museum of Modern Art is having a famous comedians exhibit, and the Joker, miffed at not being included, decides to steal the precious gems from that museum. Why would a modern art museum have a precious gems, or actually in TV it's the fabulous gems collection? It actually says that in the sign, because campy. But why would a modern art museum have a precious gems wing? It might have made more sense if it was just the Gotham Museum and it had a modern art wing where the comedians exhibit was. Then, yeah, they could have a whole bunch of other wings unrelated to modern art. Yeah, I maybe put too much thought into that, but, more neurons firing. Of course I do. I didn't put much thought into it when I was 8 or 7, but I was 8 or 7 at the time. Oh, there's one other episode. Batman is setting a trap for a criminal, and he has a fake emerald, and he's asking this jeweler if it's convincing, but she can't take her eyes off Batman. And just for a second I was thinking, what is it with you neurotypicals and eye contact? Yeah, again, putting too much thought into things. But yeah, I think I've got a few more episodes to watch before I get tired of this. Actually, I'm more tired of the wrapping up scene at the end of every story where they're in Wayne Manor, and usually Aunt Harriet says something about, oh, that sounds way too dangerous for you, Dick, because I don't know your secret identity, so the audience thinks it's funny. I don't think every episode of the Green Hornet had, though. Several of them did, but not, I don't know. Of course, the Green Hornet, it was worse because most of the stories were one-parters. At least Batman had the luxury of having an hour to tell the story, usually. I wish the Green Hornet would come out on DVD, or better yet, Blu-ray. I wonder if there are rights issues with that series the same way there were with Batman, which is why it took so long. Well, one can always hope, right? Okay, today's task is to do something with this ground beef that I have here, and I think also this broccoli. Yeah, I'll probably make some taco filling using a 2-to-1 ground beef to ground broccoli ratio. Get it? Yeah, because tax day. Get it? Huh? I'm so subtle.